How do you go from supporting one child's development at a time to leading programs and people responsible for supporting thousands? Today, Eileen Lombardo-Young answers that question. Eileen is a speech pathologist, an educator, and the executive director of preschool programs and services at All About Kids. Her role in making a difference in the lives of children was built case by case through hands-on experience as a provider. A SUNY New Paltz graduate and an ASHA-certified clinician, she began her career supporting autistic students aged 6 to 21. Then she worked across preschool programs, evaluations, camps, teletherapy, and clinical supervision. Over more than 2 decades, Eileen has moved from managing a therapy caseload to leading multidisciplinary teams and overseeing early intervention, preschool, and school-age services across New York State.
Every decision, every thought process is about the kids. That's really and that's why All About Kids just kind of connects with me too, because any decision you make, whether it's about, an assignment with this child and this provider, whether it's about putting this program manager here or the way this workflow happens, it's all to have a successful quality service being provided. And, we actually just brought some interns in today and we did an orientation, and that's the first thing I tell them. Every decision, every, number you put from this thing to this system is so that child can get a service. So always connecting what we do and the work every day on every level back to the kids, that's what keeps me going every day.
Along the way, she's helped therapists grow, families navigate important decisions, and children to continue to receive high-quality care even through the uncertainty of COVID.
Thank God I had this background that we were able to jump in and help navigate it. Was it perfect? No, I don't think anything was at that point, but I think a lot of people learned a lot really quickly and were so surprised at themselves at how adaptable they were. After providing services in one manner for so many years, they were able to shift on a dime. Also, as much as it was brutal and it was hard on every company and every industry, it also brought us together and gave us an awareness of what we can do and what we can accomplish and what we can get through. And then after that, I felt like, what could be worse than that? We can get through anything.
On the All About Kids podcast today, we'll explore what direct clinical care taught Eileen about leadership, why talented providers sometimes burn out, what parents should really look for in a therapist, how motherhood keeps Eileen grounded, and how she helped navigate All About Kids through the chaos of the COVID crisis. Without further ado, please enjoy this deep and wide-ranging conversation with Eileen Lombardo-Young. Eileen Lombardo-Young, welcome to the All About Kids podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Before we get into All About Kids, I want an update on a very important part of your life, which is exploring nature and the outdoors.
I love it.
Have you been on any cool hikes or outdoor trips recently?
Recently, well, let's see.
Lately, it could be a loose definition of recently, could be months.
Recently it's pretty loose because the last camping trip I had got rained out and wasn't as successful as I wanted. But one of the coolest adventures I had was going to Arizona and going to the Havasupai tribe reservation and doing a crazy 10-mile hike in the most remote area I've ever been to the most beautiful waterfall with red rocks and beautiful blue water. And that's been, a bucket list trip that I was able to do the last couple of years. So that's kind of the epic. To nothing beats that at this point yet.
Amazing. Did you have to reserve that, or how did that work?
It was a lottery, and a friend of mine called me one day and was like, Eileen, guess what? I need you to book these weeks and tell work that you need off. And I was like, why? She's like, don't worry, I'll tell you tomorrow. I'm like, all right. So in my head, it popped up. I'm like, oh my God, she got the lottery to this trip that I've been wanting to do for probably a decade. She called me back. She's like, I got reservations. We're in and we're going.
Wow.
And it was such a trip. It was amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I got to do it with childhood friends that I grew up with, that we got to go on this adventure together. It was 4 women, putting our packs on and going in, and it was amazing.
That's so great. You guys got to reconnect. I had to ask you because anytime we were at a conference together, it's been a while, but whenever we're, somewhere out and about and we're not too far from nature, there'll always be a text at some point where you go, hey, I'm going for a walk at 7:30, 2
Oh,
hours
no.
before anyone else is up, "Do you wanna come?" And
Yeah.
I know that you have the nature bug in you, so I
Yep,
thought that would be a fun thing
absolutely.
to start with.
And I try to share that even at work. I mean, we went to a conference and I had districts and other agency directors kinda all come together and do a hike. So it's cool to build that community through work and through my personal
Yeah.
life, you know? It's kind of, a passion is a passion no matter how you see it.
Speaking of building that community, before
Mhm,
you became part of the speech pathology community, before that became a career for you, what made
mhm.
you curious initially about how children communicate?
It's funny. So when I was, I guess it was the summer before my college years, a friend of mine's mom invited us to apply for a job at a school that she works at to be a classroom aide. And I was like, all right, this sounds cool. I've always loved kids. Let me go check it out. I walked into the classroom, and the classroom had, I guess it was about 8 kids, 2 adults, and a teacher. And the kids were not like kids I've met before. So as I kind of got there, I was really intrigued by what I saw, and it was a classroom of children on the
Mhm.
spectrum who were so individual and unique, and I loved every minute with them. And I didn't even know really what autism was back then. It wasn't that awareness and that, acceptability that's out now. And that night, I asked my mom to drive me to the library and I looked up what autism was, and that's really what started the whole passion is working with kids on the spectrum who really have very low language and low ability to communicate, and that's what got me into applying for schools and going straight for speech. So, I really knew I wanted to be a speech therapist really early on, like I was like 16, 17.
Mm.
So I kind of feel like I'm so lucky that I found something at such a young age that I kind of had this focus from the start. I thought at first, like when I was younger, oh, I'll be a teacher, but something about working like one on one and really connection with communication and socialization with kids just took it to that next level for me. So that kind of is what brought me into it.
What year was that when you first got to interact with kids on the spectrum?
I had to be like 93,
Okay.
94, maybe. So it was pretty, early on. And then after I went to school to be a speech therapist, when I did my clinical fellowship, I kind of still stuck with I wanted to work with kids who are most impacted and have like, non speaking, nonverbal kids at the time using augmentative systems. And at that point, California was like the peak for all of the innovation and the research, around autism that I went out there to do my
Yeah.
clinical fellowship.
And 93,
Mhm.
94. This was also pre-widespread internet, so if you wanted to
Oh,
learn
yeah.
about autism, you had to actually interact with people
Yes.
with
And I literally
autism.
went to a
Yeah,
library to look up, like, what to find out more information to be able to do that research. It wasn't at your
yeah.
fingertips. It definitely wasn't like it is today.
I know it was a while ago, but were there any interactions from that initial group of kids with autism that stand out
Mhm.
to you, or just anything that you remember looking back where you're like, "Oh, like, I could see that kind of drawing me into their world, or I could see how
It
this
was
connected me to wanna
It
get
was just
deeper."
the connection with them.
Mm,
Like, I loved my time with them. I got so much reward into just day-to-day engaging and interacting, and once you caught their attention and you connected, like, nothing else felt like that before to me. And that's really what drove it. So, I could still see and know the kids by name from that class.
yeah,
After all these years, I still know who they are, the little things that, like, clicked with us and we had as a connection this many years
yeah.
later. So that's really what brought me to the whole speech world.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so 16, 17 years old, that's where you start to think about what might I
What do you
do
wanna
in
be when you grow
college?
up?
What, like, what am I gonna study for the next 4 years of
Yeah,
my life? After that
yeah,
experience, did you immediately know you wanted to get into communication and childhood development? It was kind
yeah.
of like right there. You're like, "I'm doing this,"
It was
and
like a no-brainer. This is what I wanted to do, and I never looked back. So from applying to undergrad, I went to certain schools that had speech pathology as the, undergrad, went right to grad school, and just kind of had this drive from day one.
there are
Mhm,
a decent amount of grad students who do
mhm.
end up either watching these episodes or they comment on clips. looking back on your time as a grad student, what do
Mhm.
you wish that you knew in grad school that now is the wiser Eileen you maybe would have told yourself when you're 19, 20, 21 years old?
Yeah, hard work pays off. It really does. And you work your butt off and you do reap the rewards of it. And even today, as long as that passion and that love is there, no matter how hard the work is, you'll be rewarded tenfold back. With the what you put in, you'll get back 10 times more if it's what you love to do. And that's what I always say, even with new grads or people I'm interviewing to come to the company. I can, you could teach someone the clinical refining skills, but you can't teach someone to love what you do.
Mm.
And if you love it, put the work in because it'll all pay off in the end.
So you've felt like you found the love through the effort. Like
Yeah,
the more you
absolutely.
found angles to dig into it, the more
Mhm,
you were able to build a love for what you do. Because I sometimes I think
yeah,
that people think that you should love what you do 100% and then get into something, but the more
mhm,
people I've talked to on the podcast, the more I think it's like what you're saying, where you just have
mhm.
an interest in something and then you build that passion and love through
Around it. Mhm.
repetitions, the thousands of
Yeah.
repetitions that you do when you see
Yeah, and
kids.
experience and knowledge, and the more you know, the more things are interesting and you dig deeper, and that's kind of what grad school is. Like you get a little taste here and then it develops and grows, and then you get a little taste here and it kind of keeps navigating to you, over the years of even then, becoming a professional and working with different kids, like you still tap into those same. And I love the connection of it all,
Mm,
of how one thing drives another thing and leads to another thing, and that big picture connection. I love it, and it kind of comes through from being an SLP all the way to whatever else you're going to do in your life.
yeah.
That hard work and dedication with what you love, just like a big hike, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy, but the accomplishment at the end is worth that view at the top. It's that same kind of theory of go for what you want, and when you get there, it'll be worth it.
Yeah, yeah, just thinking about that peak when you're
Mhm.
trudging up the mountain, thinking about
Exactly.
how tired you are and how much you
Yeah,
need
or
sleep.
blisters on your
Yeah.
feet, you're like, "What was I thinking? Did I think I could do 12 miles in
Yeah.
4 like, why what am I doing?" It's that same thing. I have this class, then I have, the internship I'm doing after, and then this, and then I have my own family life and all these things all
Mm.
connected, but it's worth it. It really
So
is.
so you get your Master's of Speech Pathology at New Paltz, correct? SUNY New Paltz.
Mhm. Yep.
Then you
Undergrad and
undergrad
grad.
and
Mhm.
grad, and then you begin your career working with students on the spectrum between the ages
Mhm.
of 6 and 21. Which
Yep.
is a wide range to deal with right off the bat.
It sure is.
What
Mhm.
did that wide age range of working with kids on the spectrum teach you about communication needs? Because going from a 6-year-old to 20-year-old, that's a lot to deal with within the
Yep.
same day or the same hour, depending on what the
Yeah.
group is.
So really, I think the thread in all communication is, getting your wants and needs met, getting your ideas crossed, and connecting you with other people. And that really goes across the lifespan, whether, you're a young child, a child who's older, or even someone, with any kind of difficulties communicating. It's making that connection and getting your needs met. And, I think working with kids and understanding the why of communication, like, why do they wanna communicate? That's where that social connection with either the child you're working with or the families you're working with, understanding why they need to communicate from their perspective, that's how you're gonna get that
Mm.
goal
Yeah.
met. And I think, working with kids who are older and already have a lot of things in place, it's now, what intrigued me is then that same school that I was working at opened a preschool while I was there,
Mm.
and I got the opportunity to see kind of those earlier years of communication, not 15 years in or 20 years in where they've been, in therapy for so long. Now I get to see them at a younger age where you're kind of building that foundation that can go through their years. And then that's when that early intervention and preschool just boomed in my brain of like, this is where the development and that foundation comes from. And the stronger it is at this age, those kids that are, 16 and 20 are gonna have it throughout their whole life.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait. school age is awesome and I got so much experience here, but if I can, get them younger and see what else we can do at that younger age and work with families of the why they need to communicate and give them that from an early on in their life, it's just going to help them throughout their
Yeah.
years and their, progression.
Yeah, I imagine the older that you see a kid for the first time that has developmental needs, the harder it's gonna be
It is.
to help them out with their behaviors, and that's something that
Mhm,
we talk about at All About Kids is getting your children evaluated early and getting them into
mhm,
therapy to see providers. Did you feel when you were working with the older kids, like,
mhm.
you kind of you're almost, like, battling the habits that they learned from providers
A
and
little
their
bit.
parents
Yeah.
before they ever met you. So you kind
Yeah.
of come into this universe that's been molded by other people, and then you have this
Mhm,
really big challenge of trying to make
mhm.
a difference and kind of breaking through that outer habit layer that's been solidified over 15, 20 years.
Yeah. And that's with any new relationship,
Yeah.
right? Like everyone has prior experience that drives their future experiences. So, understanding where they came from and where they are now and where they want to go, I think is really, how you tap into that best. That's
Yeah.
kind of where my head was is like I'm here to do whatever this child needs me to do. What happened before, I need to take into account. What's present needs to be taken into account. And then what the
Yeah.
future is, where we're going, needs to also take into account to be able to really do the best job I
Yeah.
can. Mhm,
Talking to other providers on the podcast, there tends to be a lot of early burnout with many
mhm,
providers because you're going from being supervised and then you're kind of thrown into the deep end after grad school and CF year. Is
yeah,
there an experience or a case that you had early on that you felt like it gave you an extra push forward where maybe you were feeling burnt out or something you look back to where you're like, okay, maybe I feel in over my head right now within the first couple
yeah.
years on your own, but this case made me feel like everything was worth it that you were doing.
Yeah, I had a little kiddo that I worked with who was probably 3.5-ish when I started working with him. He imitated some sounds, used a lot of behavior to communicate. So sometimes it was perceived that as challenging behaviors, but most of the time it was associated to communication. We implemented an AAC device. He picked it up so quickly so quickly.
Mm,
So by 4.5, he's readily using, multiple augmentative systems. And
wow.
by 6, right before it, like, so he turned 5, turned towards 6, and boom, he started speaking. And that was just mind blowing. Like, where in that 2.5, 3 years, having the support of augmentative communication helped kind of ease that communication frustration. And you see this burst in verbal language came out.
That's
Like, it was
amazing.
mind-blowing. Yeah, it was mind-blowing, so that I always look back at, when you hear little kids and they're not using words yet, like, you never know when
Yeah.
that's gonna happen, and to what degree, nobody has that crystal ball, but it's important to never lose the function of communication because then it could continue to grow and develop as that communication develops. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I look back on. Like, you just got to keep going. Like, as hard and challenging as it is, and, maybe that kid doesn't want to do it that day, or
Yeah.
you're tired and you don't want to do it. There could be that one day that all the wires cross and things kind of connect. And again, the hard work pays off. So, as much as burnout is a real thing, it's keeping
Yeah.
work-life balance around that burnout so that it's all about the balance of everything. So I just look for all, even myself, you
Yeah.
have to always try to reiterate that work is work, but there is that work-life balance that keeps you grounded enough to go back to work each day.
Yeah, that's an amazing impetus to have early in your career. So,
Mhm.
what drew you to All About Kids?
So I mean, a lot of things. First of all, because there was a big early intervention in preschool, which is kind of my heart and my passion. That both Mike and Kathy Grosswald, who were owners, were SLPs. That always, knowing that they had that speech background in their head, just kind of gave me that security of like they're in it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons. And I was, looking for another kind of career change at that point. I was doing telehealth, teletherapy work before COVID, right? I was at another place where I was doing teletherapy before teletherapy was like well known.
Before it was cool.
Um, Before it was
Yeah.
cool. Actually, it was cool then it kinda got like, "Uh-oh, we all have to do this."
Then it became an
Um,
emergency, yeah.
then it became
Like
like
a medical
yeah, it
emergency,
kinda
yeah.
kinda COVID kinda took the coolness away from it
Yeah.
a little bit, but there is definitely benefits to, teletherapy, but, that kind of made me think I wanna be back out with people again,
Yeah.
right? So I loved, the opportunity to work from home, and I was connecting with people. I got to go up to Maine. I did teletherapy with, preschoolers and early intervention program up in Maine. They sent me out there to like meet the kids in person. And when I walked in that building and when I saw the teachers that I work with and just being connected to people in the same environment again was kind of, something that was like, let me get back out there and see what's available
Yeah.
to me. So that's kind of what drew me to All About Kids.
So you have a decade or over a decade of experience working as a provider, and now you oversee
Well, more than a
it's like a
decade.
decade and a half. I think I was just going through the bullet points on the resume.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have all that experience working as a provider. Now you oversee entire programs, EI,
Mhm.
preschool, school age at All About Kids. How has
Mhm.
your experience working directly with children with developmental needs, how have you carried that into the way that you now manage programs?
Mhm. It's in every decision I make. Every decision, every thought process is about the kids. That's really and that's why All About Kids just kind of connects with me too. Because, any decision you make, whether it's about, an assignment with this child and this provider, whether it's about putting this program manager here or the way this workflow happens, it's all to have a successful quality service being provided. And, we actually just brought some interns in today and we did an orientation. And that's the first thing I tell them. Every decision, every, number you put from this thing to this system is so that child can get a service. So always connecting what we do and the work every day on every level back to the kids. That's what keeps me going every
Yeah.
day, basically.
It
Hmm.
is it's so great when organizations have people who have worked on the personal level face to face with children because a lot of times you have someone that's making decisions over the top that doesn't really know what it's like to be in the room with a kid. So
Hmm.
having people like yourself and others at All About Kids, I think obviously, we're biased, but I think that's really what helps drive a lot of the great decisions is having people who know
Yep.
what it's like to be in the room and aren't disconnected
Hmm.
from that.
Yep. Yep. And to make sure that we all continue to stay
Mm.
grounded, the more removed we are from being in that home, that everyone still needs to, on a regular basis be connected back
Yeah.
down to that level. Mhm,
So when you do go from managing your own caseload to then overseeing hundreds of providers, children,
mhm.
staff, what were the most challenging parts of making that switch?
I just don't wanna disappoint anyone, and you wanna make everybody happy, and it becomes harder the more decisions you're making on a bigger level
Yeah.
to keep everybody happy. So, I am just as much about the providers as I am the kids. So, yes, it's all about kids, but you know what? Without the providers, we can't get to those kids.
Mm,
So, it's that balance of I'm trying to, do the best we can to please all the providers who work for us in the field day to day, who are who we are to everyone else. And just to like make sure that we keep everybody is happy and content and hear what their needs are just as much as what our kids' needs are is what the providers' needs
yeah.
are. And I think that's, what I will continue to navigate. And I don't know if I'll ever, that it's a job that's never going to be done because the system, all the systems change, our needs change as providers, as agencies,
Yeah.
as the children, all those things continue to change over time. So, that's the biggest thing is making sure, everybody's needs are met.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's still it's very tough and it's challenging work being a provider. And when I'm looking on the outside from going from a provider to a manager, the thing that stands out to me is like what you were saying, the amount of variables that you have now
Mhm.
outside of your own cases that intersect with every single decision that you're making that not only affect you, but hundreds, potentially thousands of other people, depending on the size of
Yes.
your agency.
Yeah.
So that seems very overwhelming to me to
Mhm.
be given that responsibility and then go, okay, let me now stick my fingers in this web and try to make decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, but it's also exciting
Mm,
because you can also make decisions that make people's lives better and improve upon things. So, as long as your head's in the right place and your intentions are good, even if it's a decision that doesn't, please everyone, I know I'm making the
yeah,
decision from each perspective. It's not just from one side of the
yeah,
story, and I think as long as I always keep that perspective, and that's what I've done so far, which got me here today. So I just got to keep driving with, you know,
yeah.
taking perspective from everyone and making the best informed decision for myself, for the company, for, all our providers and the kids we serve.
Speaking
Mhm.
of taking perspective, I want to
Mhm.
time travel back a little bit to COVID. We
'Kay.
mentioned teletherapy before COVID. Now picture that we're in the thick of COVID, early mid 2020. As a
Mhm.
manager, you've led providers and staff through crisis situations, fires before. Now we have the biggest fire the agency and the industry in general has ever faced in modern times.
Mhm.
Take me back to the early shutdown when guidance is changing daily. No one knows what the hell is going on. Kids still need services. What were you thinking and feeling at that time?
I mean, it's hysterical. I can also vividly remember being, like, in my office and having the building manager come in with a piece of paper like, "We're vacating the building right now." And within minutes, like, then counties are contacting, states contacting, now everything, the whole world is shut down and everybody's home, and we have to figure out, once that happened, there was no revenue at all coming into the company, right? It
Yeah.
was work is ending. We are on a fee for service model, right? Just like the providers, so is the agency. So if you don't work, if you don't have people out in the field, there's no money coming in. So that was really scary. But we flipped things around as fast as we could once we got the okay to start teletherapy. Thank God I had this background that we were able to jump in and help navigate it. Was it perfect? No, I don't think anything was at that point. But I think a lot of people learned a lot really quickly and were so surprised at themselves at how adaptable they were. After providing services in one manner for so many years, they were able to shift on a dime and learn how to do a job that they've done for 5, 10, 20 years in a completely different capacity. And I think people learned a lot about themselves,
Yeah.
and then looking back also, it made our communication so different, right? So instead of walking into someone's office to tell them something, we were then having to be able to meet and connect with people all in different locations, so it actually kind of brought most of our offices closer together over time. So, as much as it was brutal and it was hard on every company in every industry, it also brought us together and gave us an awareness of what we can do and what we can accomplish and what we can get through. And then after that, I felt like, what could we
Yeah.
what could be worse than that? We can get through anything. So that whole, like, remember everyone was like, together, we're in this together vibe. Like, it was true. Like, we said it then to help us feel better, but looking back, like, it really did bring us all together in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it was
so
very
and from my
scary,
standpoint,
uncertain times.
super scary, but it was also like teletherapy in general was something that I knew was successful in other places in similar industries elsewhere. So while some people had a lot of skepticism about it, I felt like, what do you mean? We could still do this job. We could still help these families. And I hope I gave that to the other people I work with because some people were scared. They didn't know what was going to happen to their profession.
Yeah, no, I
So
would
it was.
say it definitely rubbed off and was a huge asset
Mhm,
having your
mhm.
knowledge of teletherapy and being able to set that up quickly because it did feel like it was a big gut check for the culture
Yeah.
of not just all about kids, but for other agencies because a lot of
Mhm.
agencies did not provide services for a very, very long period of time or did not survive. Like there are
Right.
more than a few agencies who didn't end up making it through COVID. And so having a staff and management and providers that are okay going day by day and being
And being
uncertain and
flexible
just
and
trusting
uncertain.
of like,
Yep.
all right,
Mhm,
she's gonna steer the ship, and
mhm.
I trust there won't be an iceberg, or if there is, I trust there would be life rafts, and
Yep,
then we can
yep,
survive
yep.
somehow.
We'll go around it,
So
we'll go on it, we'll go whichever way we need to go.
yeah,
Yep,
that was
exactly. Mhm.
huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's surreal, thinking back to those times, but I think it comes with a lot of good lessons of, once you get through something
Mhm.
like that, you can navigate pretty much anything.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. And then we had the, EI hub transition, which some, providers in our industry knows very well. That was another big challenge is getting through, a system-wide, statewide system change that also had a lot of kinks and trying to navigate that and figuring out and just shifting priorities at a time when, you needed to keep things going.
yeah,
Things needed to move.
yeah,
People needed to get paid. Providers needed to keep their livelihood. We needed to keep our livelihood as an agency. And it was tough, but we're still trucking
yeah.
along.
Taking a step back from COVID,
Mhm,
your work involves, like we were saying, so much overlap. There's balancing regulations, there's documentation, there's staffing, there's district relationships, the needs of
mhm,
the individual children. You
mhm,
see a lot of process overlap. What are the
mhm.
biggest things that you think need to be improved in this industry, or things where you go, okay, like I'm seeing all this intersect. This is a bottleneck, and we need to do something about how this operates.
Well, I'm gonna say rates, which is a big one because, people need to have a livable wage, and unfortunately, in our industry, we're all the helpers. We're the
Yeah,
ones who are gonna do the job no matter what, and I feel, New York State and the counties are trying, and we see little bits of hope, but it's just the beginning, and we need to just make sure that I was lucky enough to go to, Nassau County and Suffolk County legislator meetings and speak on behalf of our kids, our providers. There are a lot of people who left the industry, especially in preschool and early intervention, to go work for other, our fields are huge. A lot of related service and educators can work in a lot of different fields in a different capacity. They could work in clinics, they could work in schools, they could work for, districts and agencies, are kind of at the mercy of doing the best we can while not being able to compete with some of the other industries. So that probably is the biggest challenge. Even people who have the passion to work with EI had no choice but to choose other things for their own family. And I think going back to that work-life balance, like your family is important no
yeah,
matter who you are,
absolutely.
and making sure that you're putting food on the table and you're paying your mortgage, and with the cost of living rising, that's probably the most challenge in the forefront right now. And it all drives, provider capacity. So then parents are upset because there's not enough therapists. I sit in meetings where children are eligible for services. You tell a family like, oh, we evaluated at this point your child, identified needs in these areas. And, we sit down with districts and committee meetings and we offer the services, but there's no guarantee that there's a provider there to meet those service needs. And that's the part that kills me. You're finally at that point where the parent came to you for help. You're saying, yes, your child deserves this help, but not knowing that the providers out there to give that help that's probably the hardest thing right now.
Yeah, no, rates are real. Rates are real.
Mhm. Yep,
Going off of rates and supporting a family, the realities of that. You are a mom, and
I am.
being a mom also affects the way that you carry yourself, not only your job and other aspects of life. And I know that from my mom. And I
Mhm.
wanted to ask you, how does being a mom affect the way that you do your job at All About Kids?
That's a good question. I think it's giving it the best you I mean, I don't wanna be repetitious,
Yeah,
but it's about, I work just as hard as being a mom as I do being a director, as I do being a speech therapist. It's putting the work in and balancing it all, right? So, I have always wanted to be a mom way before I wanted to be a speech therapist, so that is something that's super important, and every decision I make in my life, what's gonna be best for me and my daughter, what's gonna be best for my family, and I think, having the perspective, you have
yeah,
all these roles in your life, And rules, are all there, but some take more lead on other times in your life and some take more lead in other times in your life. And that same career and family will always be with you. So that's kind of, I mean, I don't know if that would directly answer your
No, yeah.
question, but that's
It,
kind of where, it's all
it kind
perspective
of
of
just like
like,
leaks into everything that it's
yeah, it
impossible
leaks
for
into
it to
everything you
not
do. You
affect it.
can't separate it
Yeah.
completely. You can't.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You always keep a balance and a boundary, but it all intersects with each other.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know that you wanted a chance to address the providers directly.
Mhm.
What would
Mhm.
you like to say to providers of All About Kids or maybe any providers from other agencies that are tuning into the podcast right now?
Yeah, I just think, there's been some changes with ownership that have been announced recently. And I'm excited to say that All About Kids is here to stay. And we're so lucky to have our providers staying with us and, all of our team staying with us. And, All About Kids, I mentioned, is all about the kids, but we are also about our providers. So I just wanted to take a moment to, thank you for sticking with us during this transition. And we're excited to any new people who want to join us. And who knows, Mike and Kathy built a nice legacy here for us. And I've kind of been passed a torch directly, indirectly. I don't know how, but I'm lucky enough to have been passed a torch that I'm excited to keep going and keep driving. And with that foundation we have, I know we're going to grow and see even more great things for All About Kids. And I just, want to welcome and, thank those who are sticking with us throughout it.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
for those who may not know that are listening to the podcast,
Hmm.
Mike and Kathy are my parents, and they are the
Hmm.
original founders and owners of All About Kids. And
Yep.
it has been an absolute pleasure to work for them. There is not a
Hmm.
gun to my head when I'm saying that. That it has, my mom's not in the background. It had no, it has it. Obviously, when you're working for your family, there are
Hmm.
things that tend to just from your job leak over into other aspects of your
Of
life, and it
course.
becomes an
Yeah.
all-encompassing thing. But I
Hmm.
am. It's rare to be able to feel like your time is time and energy is directly going into a family business that started, you know, 20 years before I was alive, which is a rare opportunity to have. So I'm grateful for that. And I do feel excited for the future of All
Hmm.
About Kids. I know you've been saying AAK is here to stay. I do
Yep.
believe that. I think
Yep.
that on my end, being more of a social media marketing podcast guy for the
Hmm.
company, I've never felt more excited to tackle topics in the industry or pop culture that have to do with
Hmm.
developmental services, ABA, things like that. There's so much going on, and I'm looking forward
Absolutely.
to having more
Hmm.
conversations, not only with people in the company, but just what's going on in the
Mhm.
industry and like the
Mhm.
next wave of
Mhm.
caring for children and treating children with developmental needs.
Yeah, awesome.
I do have some juicy answer the internet questions.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yes.
right. Let's
So
do it.
so there are a lot of forums out there for
Mhm.
SLPs, OTs, ABA, just like providers, parents, they all
Yep,
kind of blend
special
together into these
educators, all of
Reddit
it. Mhm.
forums or other pages where people will just post Quoras and other they just ask questions. So I've went through and I've dug out a few of the juicier ones that I think people may be interested in hearing your response
Mhm.
to, whether it's a provider, a parent, a general listener, maybe a grad student or a college student that's thinking about going into being a provider, speech pathology,
Mhm.
maybe. So this is one shots fired at grad school. What's the biggest lie that grad schools unintentionally tell future providers? Do you feel that was a question that got like 400 likes and a bunch of responses.
What?
Do you did
Wow.
did you feel in any way, uh, like there was anything misrepresented to you in grad school or like grad students even now that you work with where they're like, "Yeah, they did not tell me this when we were in grad school," or stuff like
Well,
that?
I'd have to say, not from my
Yeah.
experience, but I do think, everyone has the conception that, like, grad school is the hardest part, and then once you're out in the field, everything's gonna get easier. And, like once you're here, then you're done.
Mhm.
Like that's not it. Like the next step of learning begins. And I think that, you know, I've been seeing a little bit more of like, oh, wow, there still is a lot more left to learn and a lot more to do.
Yeah.
But I don't see any direct like, you know, miscommunication or things, falsely presented to the grad students. I just think it's more of grad school is the most important to grad school professors and the education around, but that's just one step
Yeah.
towards the next step. And I think, when you're in it, that's all that matters because I'm the professor. I need to make sure you get what you need while you're here. The next step is sort of not my problem.
Mm.
So that could be where that misconception comes from, is just kind of not directly linking what they're doing there and how it applies to the real world.
Yeah, I don't have the experience to speak from in grad school and SLP or
Mhm.
OT in anything like that, but I imagine it's very hard to replicate conditions outside of grad school, what you'll be experiencing in the future as a provider inside
Mhm.
a classroom or even under supervision. So I'm sure there's,
Yep.
maybe some miscommunication or things that happen in the classroom. But if you're interested on the grad school
Yeah.
perspective, there are a few episodes with grad students on the All About Kids podcast, so you can
Yep. Yep.
check those out. The next one comes from a parent. This one
Okay.
had a lot of likes for this, but I think this one was from Cora. As a parent, what should I be looking for when choosing a therapy provider or an agency that most parents completely overlook?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that initial connection is most important, right? If you have an expectation of someone working with your child, you have to go with that gut, mother instinct, parent instinct, whatever you want. It's okay if somebody doesn't match with you. I know with the industry having, a lack of providers, people are a little bit more scared and stick with therapists a little maybe too long sometimes. I actually had a parent reach out at the end of this school year and they said, you know what, I'm thinking next year I'd like a different therapist. And I was like, okay, let's talk a little bit about why. And through that conversation, I was like, how come you didn't reach out earlier? Like maybe this wasn't just a good match. And there are, most therapists should be adaptable and flexible, but there are times that it's just not a good match. It could be scheduling, it could be, different levels that they're on or not agreeing on something. So it's okay to bring that to the attention of any agency or anyone giving you this assignment early on to try to work through it. Like you don't have to stick with it
Yeah,
too long. You have to go with your gut and that mother instinct. If something doesn't seem right, you should be reaching out to someone about it. So, there is no hard and fast, like, this is what every, mom should do. It's more feeling confident in your own feeling and gut instinct and act on that. And most of the time, it can be worked out, but when it's not addressed and you deal with it, in the end, you feel like you almost lost time
mm,
when, any provider or any agency is going to want to work with you to see what we can do to make that relationship, and those characteristics the best that you need in that match with your child.
that's a great point.
So that's kind of Mhm.
This one sounds like it's coming from a burnt out provider,
I'm sure.
which there are a lot of.
They're
What
out there. There's no doubt
why
about it.
do so many talented therapists leave the profession within the first 5 years, and what needs to change?
Well, I do think some people choose a profession, not always for the right reasons. So I think that's part of it. I think a lot of people, they see those teachers on the beach in the summer and they think they're going to have summers off, or they want to work the same schedule as their child. And it's just, it is not an easy job. And just because they have summer, like the reason why you have summers off, even though I've never had a summer off in 25 years,
Yeah,
but the reasons why some people have that is because it's a really hard job
no.
and the structure of that day to day. And people are like, oh, I'm going to be a teacher. Then I can have summers off and then I can do this. So I think that kind of weeds out a lot quickly when their heart and their passion isn't really in it, but they went in it because they thought it was a good profession. So it's one thing to have a good profession and it's one thing to have a profession that you're good at.
Yeah.
And I think that is, where a lot of people weed out.
Yeah.
Then, and that's really where if this work is so hard and I don't love it and I don't have the passion to do it, I'm going to get burnt out quickly because it is a lot of planning. It's using your own time as a young professional to navigate and understand. It gets better year after year, but early on is going to be the most work you do to help establish your flow from year after year. That I think some people, it's just not the right field.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the
So
field.
it's not just the skill level, it's also feeling like you're aligned with the lifestyle and temperament
Hmm.
required to be a provider.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe not maybe getting a little bit of false advertising from other school workers, like, it's not gonna be like a typical teacher if you're
Yeah.
seeing the summers off, it's not if people are telling you that, that's not good advice.
Not
Should
really
talk to
true,
another
right?
provider.
You're
Yeah,
going
talk
into
to another.
special ed and you're going
Yeah,
to speech,
yeah,
exactly. Not everyone gets that. It's, maybe this percentage, but it's not everyone. And, I definitely think that's part of it for
yeah.
sure is really,
And
mhm,
nowadays, it's so easy to get in contact with people if you see a provider on Instagram or you see them working in a school district to send an email or DM and say, "Hey, I'm a high school student. Can I shadow you for a day or
yeah,
shadow you for this week just to see what it's like?" It's never been easier to get a
mhm,
taste of the day in the life of an SLP
yeah,
or OT or whoever before you
mhm.
make the leap into, going into grad school.
Yeah, and I've loved like we've had an intern last year who was an undergrad in speech and now she's going into graduate school and she's having a much broader experience
Mhm.
seeing the field from many angles. So when she gets that license, she already knows what the job is. So it gives her that kind of level up from others who haven't been out in the field working in different capacities. Like I love that we're able to share that and have that, she observed all different disciplines. She is seeing the day to day and connecting with real life people in the field. And it's kind of, I feel like it's a nice edge
Yeah,
to know and give yourself that confidence. Like what I'm doing is what I want to
yeah,
do. And not everybody gets that. Sometimes it's like, oh, my so and so was a speech therapist, so now I'm a speech therapist, or my mom was a teacher, so my dad wanted me to be a this. Like I hear that from students and people coming into the profession, like they didn't really even choose it in the first place.
yeah. And if
So
you
the likelihood of it sticking is going to be harder, and you're going to get more burnt out if it's not really what you
yeah,
chose.
and if you're listening to this and you are interested in a future internship or
Mhm, mhm,
shadowing or anything, you could be a provider that's looking for cases, grad school, CFEs, send us
mhm,
a DM at AAK Cares on Instagram, and we can
mhm.
connect you with whoever the best
Yeah,
person is to speak to, 'cause
mhm,
I'm always in the DMs. So
yeah,
So hit us up. The next
yeah.
one comes from a parent, it looks like. They say
Mhm,
social media is full of a ton of therapy advice. What's a trend or
mhm.
piece of advice that we as parents should stop believing or buying into?
Hmm. A trend. Say it one more time for me. A trend or
What's a
a
trend or piece of advice that parents should stop believing or buying into?
hmm. Well, I do think, you know, people are often on social media and they're bashing people making decisions about their child's
Mhm.
plans. So whether it be a school district, whether it be, an EIOD from the Department of Health, these are people who are making the best qualified decisions and people who were put in a position to help your child. They also have the best intentions. And I think people in a lot of social media communities are kind of saying the worst end of the spectrum, but that's not the general experience. So when you're going into your first IEP meeting or you're meeting with the your child's evaluators and they're going to explain to you, what the outcomes are, you're not battling them,
Mm.
right? They're there to help you. And sometimes we feel with other people, constantly saying what a terrible experience they have, everyone feels like they're going into it as if they're going to have a bad experience. But most of those people having great experiences are not saying it on social media.
Yeah.
Those people are saying it to their friends and family, and it's not. And then maybe you'll hear them coming through here and there. But for the most part, most of the people making decisions, I wish I could say all, but I can't speak for all, but most of the people, whether it be the chairperson within the district, whether it be that evaluator, are doing what's in the best interest of your child, and to trust that they're in this profession for a reason to do right by
Mm-hmm.
you and your family. And I just feel like a lot of times, like, people are ready to go in with a battle, and there's no battle even to be had.
Yeah.
And, it could not set the right relationship up for, a relationship with the district or for your whole child's career if you come in guns blazing when you don't even need to have anything to fight. There's
Yeah.
nothing to, they might be in complete agreement with you. So hear them out before you feel you need to take any further
Yeah.
action.
That's great advice. This last
Mhm.
one also comes from a parent. They say, as a parent, this one made me laugh a little bit. How do I know if my therapist is actually great or just nice?
Wow, that's a really good one, though. It's funny because remember I was
Yeah.
saying before that we had that they were, they loved the person who was their
Yeah.
provider. They just didn't feel like they were a right connection. And that's really good. So I think what's important is always asking whether the child's making progress on their goals. So every plan, whether you have an IEP as a school, whether you're in preschool or school age, or an IFSP, there are, stated goals that the therapist should be working on, and whether a child is making progress. Whether the therapist is giving you input on how they're making progress, that's a good indication of, are they working on the right things? Are they, giving you feedback on how to see changes in these skills? Are they providing strategies to you to help support those skills? Really, it's not just about how they do, oh, they did great, everything's great. It should never be everything's great. It should be, we worked on this, when we worked on that, your child did this. This is how I helped them. This is how you can help them.
Mm,
And that's what's going to make a great therapist. It's, I always say you can't sit, after and talk to a parent and say, oh, well, they do that for me. Your job isn't for them to do it for you.
yeah.
Your job as a therapist is for them to do it for everyone they need to do it with, not you. You're there to help facilitate that so the skill you teach generalizes to their family, to their school, and embedding that generalization piece is huge. So if you have a therapist that's saying, oh, they do that for me, I don't know why they don't do that for you, like, that's not someone who's really helping your
Yeah, yeah.
child, right? So to kind of look at it as how much they're helping your child, how they can explain how they're helping your child, and how they are explaining to you how you can help your child. And that's what makes a great therapist and sets people a little bit above the others, are people who take that extra time to explain
Yeah.
that. And it's also just giving that, open communication. As a therapist, I always say, like, the more a parent wants, the more I'll give, right? So I will do my check-ins and let you know how things are going. But if you want more than that, you need to let us know. Like, say, and I know, after the session you mentioned that, I need a little more. Like, tell me something else. Or can we connect maybe after the next session and not, another month from now, or only when it's the progress report? Like, what you need from us, it will be met, but you have to also
Yeah.
be clear from your perspective. Like, we have quarterly check, there's certain things regulation wise that we have to do in connection to a parent on a regular basis. But if you want more than that, that's okay too. It just needs to be, expressed. And that's how you'll know if they're just nice
Yeah,
or
yeah,
if
yeah. Don't
they're,
don't be don't be
a little bit
afraid
better than that.
to be
Yeah.
vocal to your provider, and a
Yeah.
good provider
Yeah.
should be receptive and
Exactly.
understanding and be willing to work with
With
the
you.
parents'
Mhm.
wants and needs, as long as it's in the best interest of the child's development.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
this last one is not from the internet. This one is from me, and I thought it would be a
Uh
good question to end off on. It ends on a positive. It ends on a positive. So what's something that makes you anxious or worried a little bit about the future of the industry, and what's something that makes you optimistic about the future of the industry of child's development? We'll start with the worrisome first, so we could end
All right.
end
So
on
the
a positive
worrisome
note.
Yeah, the worrisome part, I have to say, there's gonna be some upcoming, coding changes for speech language pathology. So I've been in the field for over 25 years, and I've used the same Medicaid coding for the whole time of my life, and that's changing coming up.
Mm,
So, not that I'm worried about it, but it's just something that it's never happened before. So, it's the unknown. So there will be changes with that 92507 code, which I'm sorry, if you're a speech therapist, you use that code
yeah,
often. That code's ending and new codes are going to be replacing it, which could impact billing and service provision and all those kinds of things. So that's just something like in the back of my head that's coming in the next, few months from now. Um, when it comes to hope and excitement, I guess is the second part of that question. Um, I just I don't know. I feel like there's always hope and excitement in my eyes
yeah,
that, it doesn't need to be one thing. Every new child in the start of a school year, anytime a child, discharges from your caseload, meaning that they've met their progress and they're at age level and they can go be little kids and not have speech anymore, like all those little bits of hope, it's the little things in the day to day that amount to the big things. It doesn't need to
100%.
be like, oh, all of a sudden we're gonna get this big thing, like of course, any rate changes are nice little bonuses along the way, but for now, I think it's just to focus on the little hopeful things day to day, and when they all add up to the big, it's all about the little things, not always about the big
Yeah.
things. Mhm.
Eileen, thank you so much for hopping on the All
Yeah,
About Kids
thanks for
podcast.
having
This has
me.
been
This is
an
so fun.
absolute
Mhm,
blast. Where can
mhm.
people keep up with all things Eileen or reach out if they have a question for you? I know you post
Yep,
about your hiking adventures on, I don't know if it's
yep,
Facebook or Instagram or
yep, yep, all
email.
the above.
What are the best places
Yeah.
for people to reach you or send you a message? And I can link that
Yeah, I
in
think
the
All About Kids email is always the best contact, and I have my direct extension as well. You guys are always welcome to reach out.
perfect. I'll
Mhm,
I'll put that in the episode description as well.
mhm.
Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Eileen.
Alright.
And until next time,
Until
round
next
two.
time, thanks everyone. AAK is here to stay.
AK is
Woohoo.
here to stay.
Alright.